Hello and welcome to my channel, From Profession to Passion, with me, Vicky Mittman. The purpose of this channel is to inform and inspire professionals to live their careers on their terms. Whilst the traditional route in many professions may work well for some, it isn't for everyone, and there are different ways of doing things. On this channel, I'll be sharing my own story of how I combined my profession in law with my passion for coaching and mentoring, and I'll be interviewing other professionals who've developed their own side hustles, changed career directions altogether, or found some other way to involve their passions in their professional lives. I am delighted today to be joined by Rachel Schofield. Rachel, welcome to the channel. Thank you for joining me.
It's a real pleasure to be with you, Vicky. Thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. Rachel's a really exciting guest for me. She is a qualified career and personal development coach, but that's not where it started for Rachel. She's had a really exciting 20-plus career in journalism and reporting. Rachel, could you start by telling us a little bit more about your journey so far?
Yes, thank you. So, yeah, I always think if you kind of cut me open, you'd find the words BBC kind of written in my bone marrow. And I always thought I would be a journalist forever. So I studied modern languages at university and of course had that first moment, as you do, when you kind of get to the end of your studies, of what next. And I wasn't someone who thought I absolutely have to be a journalist. At that point, it was one of several options. I looked at joining the Foreign Office, for example. I applied, didn't get in. Nearly became a spy. That's a whole other story. But seriously, nearly joined MI6. I looked at arts administration. I thought about working in the third sector. So there were quite a lot of things on the go. I thought, should I be teaching or working abroad, because I'd done languages? But in the end, there were lots of things about journalism that really appealed to me. And I'd done some student radio. I loved the idea of being a radio or a television reporter or presenter. So that was the pathway I took after university. I did a year's postgraduate course in London in broadcast journalism. As part of that, had some work experience up with the BBC in Newcastle. And then when I qualified, was able to go back and work for them freelance. And that turned into 20 years with one organisation that I was very proud of. I must say, working for the BBC felt very exciting. It felt like I was working for a really well-respected organisation that had an identity globally. I felt very aligned with the BBC's values and worked my way from being in local radio, local TV news up to Radio 4. I used to report on You and Yours and Woman's Hour, and ended up for the bulk of my career on the BBC News Channel. What was once News 24 became the BBC News Channel. It's undergoing another evolution now, but I was a presenter on rolling 24-hour news. And did really enjoy it, but like many people, hit a moment where I thought, is this what I want going forwards?
Yeah, that's something I come across quite a lot in my coaching, and I'm sure you do too. That sort of, is this what it's going to be forever now? Now that we've made this commitment, particularly when you've had so long in that career.
That's right. So I think I often say to people, career changes so you don't wake up one day and go, right, today is the day for my career change. You just start to get that creeping feeling, don't you? I was talking to a potential client yesterday. He said, I've been thinking this for 10 years. And it comes and goes and it waxes and wanes. And it's not necessarily that you hate it. You know, sometimes people are desperate to leave a job because they loathe it. But for a lot of us, it's not that. It's just that sense of, have I somehow, is it outgrown it, or has this run its course? Do I want something new? Am I ready for a different challenge, or to lean into certain skills that I have and things that I like as opposed to others? It's just that kind of taking stock. And I think that's what I did. I think I'd had a sense for quite a while that I enjoyed it, and there were elements I still really loved. And it sounds mad, you know, when you're someone who's presenting on a national news channel, people would sort of bite your arm off for that. But all jobs, in a way, become a little bit repetitive and become a bit formulaic, and you sort of think, where's the challenge? And I think it got to the point where not enough was working, and you just get curious about those feelings of like, why do I not get excited to go in? Or why am I slightly thinking, why am I not hustling for extra things, or putting myself forward for certain pieces of coverage, or looking for extra shifts? Because I was freelance by then. Actually, I'd been through various incarnations of full-time and then part-time. I've got 2 kind of teenage kids, and I'd then gone freelance at one point. And I just realized my heart just wasn't in it in the way it once had been. And that led me to think, as many people do, what else is out there? Am I ready to let go of this kind of identity and this cloak and this I work for the BBC, which was always felt quite powerful. And I hope that doesn't sound arrogant, but there's a safety, isn't there, in some of these big organizations or these known industries. I'm a journalist, that has some currency. And to sort of say, but I'm not sure I want to be anymore, or I think I might stop working for the BBC, that in itself is a process that you have to make peace with. And alongside that is that process of, but what else is there? What could I do? What would I like to do? What would be fun? What would be possible? And then, of course, all the voices come like, no, you can't do that. You probably won't manage. So, I went through that and ended up, long story short, ended up coaching.
Yeah, well, tell me, what was it that led you into coaching? What was it that sort of sparked that interest from the, well, what could I do next feeling?
I think it was trying to get interested, and it's what I now do with clients and what you do as well, Vicky, I know, is that sort of, well, what do I want to take with me? What are the sort of fundamentals, the pillars inside of me that I want to still build on, that I still want to use as foundations, but in a different way? And an exercise I talk about in my book, The Career Change Guide, is that exercise of trying to find the common threads in your career or in other parts of your life that keep showing up and that light you up. And for me, it was something around communication, that idea of being with people and hearing their stories. That's journalism, but that's also coaching. It's about questioning and curiosity. That's journalism, but that's coaching. It's asking people questions. It's hearing somebody's real underlying stories. And it's about perhaps helping clarify and shine light on something, which again is what a lot of what I was doing when I was interviewing politicians and looking at big news stories. But it's also what you're doing when you're helping someone unpick what's going on in their life and what their story is. So a lot of those themes I can see now in my coaching. When I made the transition, I didn't go work with a career coach. So all of this was a little bit feeling my way. So some of this I can see now with hindsight. In honesty, I just got curious, I think. And this, again, I think is a great approach when you're considering a career change. Is coaching caught my eye. I think I met a couple of coaches. I hadn't worked with a coach. And I just thought, how can I find out more about this? It's sort of just thinking, well, something sparks, something feels a bit interesting. What can I do to just dive into that without making a massive commitment or handing in my notice? I wasn't at that stage, but I went along to a taster day at a coaching organization and thought, that was interesting. That was fun. I think I could do it. I think I have some of that skill set. And then got to the point where I thought, I'm ready to sign up for the course. But even at that point, I ran that in tandem with my BBC work. So again, as with lots of career changes, it's not like on Tuesday I quit and on Wednesday I start my whole new life. It's much more of a transition, isn't it? So I was still working for the BBC, but I'd started the career coaching. And again, if I'm totally honest, and I say this because I hope it's reassuring, I wasn't totally sure what I was going to do with the coaching. I've ended up being a career coach and a women's leadership coach. But I just thought, I'm interested enough. I have the time. I think I'll enjoy this growth and learning opportunity, whether I turn it into a career or not. I wasn't sure at the beginning, but I thought I'm going to just follow my instinct and start that journey without saying goodbye to the BBC yet, without making the decision. So that's what scares people. It's the moment of decision. But people often think they have to make that decision much earlier than they do. I think a career change actually is a series of lots of tiny actions and steps. It's not like that sudden moment where you're like, I've made the decision, because that's what keeps people stuck. But actually, I just thought I'm going to start the course and see where it takes me. And so gradually I qualified, started looking for clients, and that process was very gradual. And it was really not until COVID when my BBC work essentially got very quiet, because of course, like everywhere else, the BBC was then trying to work with very few people in the building. They started simulcasting 2 news channels, so they only needed half the presenters. Everything got smaller and smaller, and it was sort of a kick up the bum then, because I thought, well, the freelance work that I'm so used to relying on is looking like it's going to go quiet for quite a while. So right, let's really kind of make an effort to pick up the coaching and make something of it and build the business. And that's the other bit of when you set up on your own in a career shift. Of course, it's one thing to do the training and say, I'm a coach. And it's the next bit is like, yeah, but you need some clients and you need to get out there and market yourself and you need to explain what you do. And that's the bit that I think, again, it's about identity is scary for people. It's how do I explain myself? You know, people feel they have to almost justify what they've done and why they're doing it. And again, that takes a bit of time, I think, making peace with the move for yourself and being able to tell a story that makes sense to the world, who are always ready to be like, what are you doing that for? But it's
absolutely.
been great. No, it's been really good.
Oh, well, I'm glad, and thank you for sharing that, because I think learning, I mean, as so many people watching these recordings are, that it's not necessarily that one day you're one thing and one day you're something else. It's actually a much slower process, and mine was too. I mean, I am still a practicing lawyer, and I will say I've shifted my career completely, but also still being that career that I was already, that professional that I was already, because what I've done is come out of a full-time private practice role into a much more flexible role that I control about the work I take on as a lawyer, and then my entire coaching business, which is separate. And I think knowing that can happen in stages, knowing that it can happen gradually, is really important. But there were two words that you mentioned that I really picked up on and resonated with. One was about remaining curious for what it is that really drives you, what your values are, what sort of, if someone cut you open, what would they really see, those fundamental parts which have never changed, and how they can apply to both careers. And in fact, if you had a third career later on, it would undoubtedly apply to that too. You're not suddenly going to not care about people and their journeys or communication. That's always going to be part of you. I think that was really resonant with me, and also the idea of just trusting your instincts and going with it, because we often have those feelings, and those feelings are there for a reason. You know, the reason they come up in us is crucial to sort of just explore and not ignore those feelings.
Yeah, exactly. I think a coaching question that I often invite my clients to reflect on is when they share an insight or a thought, it's making sure you take the next step. It's also getting curious about, well, what do you think that's telling you?
Yeah.
And when I ask that question of clients, not because it's not a loaded question like, oh, what do you as if I know I'm just genuinely curious, and people are like, yeah, I'm not sure. I need to think more about it, or I think it's something to do with I need more of this, or I need less of that, or so it's always trying to get, you're right, it's noticing the sensation or the feeling, whether that's a positive emotion or a troubling thought, and just trying to get that little bit underneath it.
Yeah, a little bit deeper into it. And like you just almost alluded to then, a second coaching question around it, with what does that feeling need? Does it need a bit of awareness? Does it need acknowledging that it's there? And actually, what might that lead to? I feel like we could go down a rabbit hole of coaching questions there.
It would be a lot of fun. It'd be fun. And
I just want to have that for the second video when I talk to you about your spy career. It sounds really fun.
Exactly. But the other thing you mentioned, and I wanted to pick up because I think it's really important, is that sense of these threads that show up and sort of repeat and can be differently incarnated in your career. Also, the fact that even when you've made a shift, it's not a one-time decision. Like the decision doesn't happen overnight, and also it's not a binding decision. I think that's the other thing that puts people off. And I say this cautiously, because obviously you don't want to make a career change thinking I'm not convinced. You want to be pretty sure you don't want to, because people always say, I'm worried, what if I get it wrong? And of course you want to be as sure as you can be. And, as coaches, we help people with that, to think about what it is they need, and is this a good fit, and what are your values, and what are your strengths, and what do you need from work? But even then, you get to still evolve. Yeah. And I'm doing that even now. So although I went from BBC journalist and I coach, I've noticed recently a lot of my coaching work is one-to-one, and means a lot of time on Zoom, in sitting in my office. And I suddenly thought, I really love working with my clients, but something's missing again. So again, I just got curious, and I thought, well, what I'm missing from my days as a BBC presenter is some of the work in the studio, some of the presenting bit. So again, I thought, well, how can I bring that in? And actually, so I've just taken on some additional work, which I will run alongside my career coaching, which is doing more facilitation work and running more workshops. So I'm doing some associate work with a women's leadership program, still coaching, so I'm doing some group coaching with them, but also running some workshops. So it's sort of thinking, where's the itch? And thinking, how do I scratch it? So it's that sense as well of knowing, even when you make a shift and you've got your next direction of travel, it is just that, generally speaking. It's not like, right, I've made this decision, it's a one-time thing, that's me sorted for the next 20 years. It's like, okay, I've set a new direction of travel. It looks like this and this. I'm excited about it. And yet I also am mindful that I can still tweak, I can still course correct. Obviously you don't want to have 6 massive career changes, but within the work that you do, there's always room for maneuver and to do more of this and less of that, and to create it as you go and shape it. And I think that can be reassuring for people as well, that it's not a kind of one time and that's it.
Yes, and actually that came up on another one of my my recorded sessions with Stacey, who was a friend of mine from law school, and we've kept in touch since then. And she was she still is over in Sydney, and she'd been a lawyer for quite a long time. But after the birth of her second child, she didn't want to have the same sort of corporate hours, and she shifted slowly into a totally different career in photography. And she realized that she was actually getting a lot of questions from other women who had said, I've loved photography, I'd love to set up a business, but I have no idea how. So she went from lawyer to photographer, and then a bit later, within photography, she also had a course on teaching people how to run a photography business, because from her corporate and employment career, she had so much more understanding of what it takes to run a business, how to make really good slick systems, make sure, even just marketing is consistent, and websites and responding to client inquiries is really slick. That was something that actually came from her legal career, that knowledge, but it showed that her progression into photography, which she still does and loves, has also led to other things, which she said it's even easier to evolve the second time, because you're actually so aware that you can do it and you've got that confidence and resilience, but also you're more like, yeah, that could be really fun. Let's try it. If it doesn't work, let's try this,
Yeah, I love that. It's that sense of realizing that new opportunities will often present themselves, and you can run with them or not, but you can't necessarily foresee them. So your friend wouldn't have said, I'm going to retrain as a photographer and then I'm going to help other people build a photography bit. That was never part of her plan, but there is an organic nature to our careers as well, that people cross your paths and say, have you ever thought about doing this? You'd be really great at that. Or
I know you help me with this, and that just comes up naturally. I mean, I love that. And also, I think because you're a career coach as well, and I'd love your thoughts on this. I'm often asked, sort of, what advice would you give someone who is sitting at their desk thinking, I really want to change, but I'm not sure what. I just don't feel happy. I'm a bit stuck, a bit dissatisfied or unfulfilled. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I think the really powerful one for me, and there are lots of different bits of career coaching and the process, and most career coaches work in a reasonably standard way, and I do as well. There's one piece of it, and quite a big piece of it, is around reflection. And you'll have talked about this with other coaches, so I won't elaborate too much, but it's the kind of, what are my values and my strengths? Who am I? What do I want? And a lot of that work initially can happen a little bit up here and sort of in your gut and your heart, and a coach will help you lean into that. But for me, when I've done that work with a client, I think the most powerful thing for the person sitting at their desk thinking, shall I, shan't I, is to actually get out of their head and to get away from behind the computer screen. I always say you can't Google your way into a career change, although many will try. Most people who are thinking about a career change, if I looked at their Google search history, would have visited the same 10 sites, 76 times over the past 6 months. They keep kind of going back and back and thinking, let me just check out that course again. Let me just see that particular job board. But it doesn't move them forward. And I think for me, it's about getting off your backside, going and talking to people who are doing the kind of work that you're curious about. You're not saying, I definitely want to do it. You're not applying for a job. You're just saying, can I have a cup of coffee? Or asking your friends, who do you know who's a graphic designer? Because it interests me. I'm not sure quite why. I don't really know what it looks like. I've got no idea if I've got the skill set, but I want to find out more. Or, what could I go along to? What conference could I attend? What podcast could I listen to? What book launch could I go? Who could I then talk to that I'm sitting next to? I think you've got to get active. You've got to sign up for a day's course in, if you think you want to be a potter, go and stop thinking. People are already designing websites in their heads and going, I've got this lovely business card. I'm like, how many pots have you made? Well, I sort of did a course once when I was 7. Okay, well, should we start by
just actually doing some of the practical side?
A Saturday pottery course. And even then, it's just, if you have something there, just follow it up in a small way. Have a conversation, do something, give it some time. And that will move you forwards far more than just constantly trying to think and Google. And also it will throw up, a bit like we were talking about how things evolve. I think with career change, your starting point is very often not where you end up. It's the journey itself is where things get interesting, because you stumble upon people.
Yeah.
You start off saying, I think I'd like to work in the third sector. I think I'd like to go and do fundraising for a charity. But then by talking to people, you suddenly go, I'm not sure that's quite right. But suddenly the person you're talking to says, oh, but have you thought about this thing, which is sort of connected, but you've never heard of it?
Thought process, doesn't it?
And they say, go and talk to my friend Sarah, or have a look at this website, and it's sort of like this big spider web, and you've got to just embrace your inner spider and go crawling about a bit, and not sit in the middle of the web waiting, thinking, will a fly land and tell me exactly what to do? No, you've got to kind of get out there.
Yeah, you're right. And I was quite lucky, because when I was sitting at my desk feeling a bit stuck and a bit unfulfilled and unsatisfied, I did have a career coaching session, which was really good. It was a colleague in my firm that recommended it, and I had it, and it was without doubt the best advice I could have had, was to go and see a career coach, because I just spent a little while looking at what was really important to me. And then the coach asked me, what of those things that's really important to you are currently being met in your everyday life? And I burst into tears and said, none of them, or like only one, law was important to me, and that was being met because I spent most of my hours at my desk in a law firm. But all of the other things I was really struggling with. And actually just seeing that realization, it made me realize what a shift I wanted. And that actually, for me, having some freedom and flexibility away from the sort of mechanical side of any career was what I really wanted. And having that ability to decide what my week would look like was really crucial. And I don't think I'd have found that on Google. That had to come from within me and within a cleverly asked question, which is why I'm so glad to be doing this podcast series, because people hear it from you, they hear it from me, and they might just ask themselves those questions, which is great. And just before we sort of wrap up, what if you could go back in time and give your 21-year-old self a piece of advice, what would you say?
I think I would say it doesn't matter if you don't have it all mapped out, and that there are lots of things that could work for you. I think there's a sort of false scenario that we set up, and I think it's shifting actually. My kids are 19 and 16, and I think it will be different for them, but there's a sense that what you decide at 19 or 21 is kind of, that's your pathway. And it creates this huge amount of pressure to kind of make the decision, stick with it, start on this linear journey that will take you to your kind of cut glass fruit bowl and retirement at the age of 65. That's gone. And I think we want to be saying to our young people, just kind of follow your interests a little bit. And I'm conscious that we can't be too sort of fridge magnety about this, and like follow your dreams, because we all need to pay mortgages or find rent, but I think those early years, we see other people looking at their kind of, this is my plan, and you can sort of panic as a 19-year-old or 21. Everybody else knows what they're doing, but I think just thinking, there are lots of interesting things. I'm not going to necessarily have time to do all of them, but I need to let go of the idea that I have to find the thing, that there's only one thing in my life, one career that will make me happy. Actually, I need to find a direction of travel and start down it, but I need to keep alert to my own enjoyment, to my own fulfillment, to my own opportunities, and to keep scanning and not to narrow too quickly.
Yeah, and not to be too blinkered, I guess, and to actually see what's going on around you, which might be interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because of how many careers are out there. You start off, whether you suddenly think, well, people often say I fell into HR, or I joined one of the big corporates, and it just kind of, I found I was on a pathway. And you don't know what you don't know. So I think, again, it's about curiosity. I think that the thing that you want to always be bringing to your career, whether you're 19 or 49, is curiosity, and trying to just keep interested in the world around you and the people around you, because that's how you find out the unknown unknowns, to quote Donald Rumsfeld, the kind of you otherwise don't know about, unless you are interested in other people and what they're doing, and other jobs and other worlds. That's how you expand your own horizons and your own opportunities.
Absolutely. Well, Rachel, thank you so much. And I will say, I have picked up a copy of your book from another session where we met a few weeks ago, which has been brilliant. And actually, in the Career Change Guide that Rachel's written, there are quite a few sort of case studies towards the back as well, which are people that have made these career shifts, and some of them are what might seem quite small steps, and others seem like a total change. But what's really interesting is the thought process that goes through them, and how they're connecting their values that we talked about, and also the skills that they've picked up, both the soft skills, although I despise that term, and the more concrete skills from their previous career into their new career. So if anyone out there is looking for some inspiration, pick up a copy of Rachel's book, which I will link a comment of in below. Rachel, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, I'll put your LinkedIn profile in, but is there a better way? Do you have a website they could go to?
Thank you. Yeah, people are always welcome to reach out to me. Yeah, so through LinkedIn. Otherwise, my website is www.rachelschofield.co.uk, and I'm on Instagram. My handle there is @reworkyourlife, all one word, rework your life. Yeah, come say hi. Always happy to chat to people and hear what the career dilemma is.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you for watching this video, and I hope it's provided some food for thought. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe below and feel free to like or comment. I'd love to know what you think. If you're interested in hearing more about this, please join my Facebook community, From Profession to Passion with Vicky Mittman. I'll see you next time.